Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining today's Green Business Fund webinar. Today we're going to be talking about green tourism, energy efficiency for the hospitality sector. Hope you're all staying cool today. Just a reminder that you can submit your questions at any time. You should be able to see these on the right-hand side in your control panel. Type your questions at any time and we'll do our best to address them in our Q&A session at the end. After today, we'll also be sending around the slides to everybody who attended and registered, and this webinar is also being recorded and it will be available to view on YouTube later on as well. So just before we get started, we'll just do some introductions.
Yes, hello, I'm Sam. I'm a senior analyst here at the Carbon Trust. I've been working on the Green Business Fund scheme, as well as a number of other kind of work streams and projects for the past 2 years. So hopefully we'll be able to deliver you some content today that will be of use.
And I'm Annie Osborne. I'm the Green Business Fund coordinator. The Green Business Fund is our free support program for SMEs, helping with energy efficiency and sustainability advice and support. And I've been with the Carbon Trust for almost 1 year now. So just a quick look at what we'll be talking through today. So after a quick introduction on the Carbon Trust and what we do, we'll be focusing on hospitality energy efficiency, specifically through accommodation and catering. We'll then have a look at transport and how that can be as sustainable as possible. We'll be running through some case studies of different hospitality and tourism industries that we've worked with before and how they've reduced their energy costs. And then we'll have a look at the best next steps that you should be taking and also the free Green Business Fund support services for you to take advantage of. So the Carbon Trust, for those of you that don't know, our mission is to accelerate the move to a sustainable, low carbon economy. We're a not-for-profit organisation and we work on our mission through 3 main areas. These are advice for businesses, governments and the public sector. We also work with carbon footprinting, measuring and certifying the environmental footprint of organisations, products and services. And we also help develop and deploy low carbon technologies and solutions. So today in particular, these are some of the areas that we're going to be covering for the tourism industry, including why we should be reducing carbon emissions and improving efficiency. And we'll be having a look at some of the no-cost and low-cost energy efficiency recommendations, as well as investment opportunities with payback periods of under 3 years, and the quick wins to help cut carbon emissions, save energy and cut costs. And as I mentioned, we'll also be talking you through some of the services we have available this year for free, which can help you identify some of these cost savings. So great, I will hand you over to Sam.
Great, thank you, Annie. So the first thing I wanted to really talk about in terms of energy efficiency in the hospitality sector is why you'd look to do it in the first place. So increasingly, many businesses, regardless of size, are looking to understand and improve their own impact on the environment in terms of carbon emissions, pollution, plastics, etc. So there's an increasing drive from companies, supply chains and customers to make these changes within a business. So energy efficiency plays a big role in that. So where you can become more energy efficient, you can really make an impact there on your environmental credentials and reputation. But increasingly, businesses want to address their energy costs. So looking at a typical SME, this chart on the slide will show you the typical business costs of that SME, and that's the whole chart there. Looking at the slightly darker portion, that constitutes the energy costs. So that can be up to 30% for a standard typical SME. So you can start to see that it's a big area of typical energy spend, and so where you can start to break down the energy spend you can start to make big inroads into the capital that's available for companies to spend elsewhere. So they're the two big main reasons that companies are looking to become more energy efficient. Other reasons include becoming more efficient as a business generally. So making energy efficiency gains also means that your business and the way you run can also run more smoothly and more efficiently. So there is a big drive to become more energy efficient. So to do so, you need to start looking at building yourself the business case to do so, looking at the investment measures that you want to take forward, whether they be low cost or of a higher cost, and looking to see where you're going to be making savings and what they're going to look like in the short, medium and long term. So the chart on the screen shows you kind of a typical business case chart, really, that plots a business as usual approach against an approach which encompasses 3 top recommendations that have been given to this example SME. So through the Green Business Fund, we can offer opportunity assessments, and so this is taken as an example from one of these assessments where we identified 3 areas that a business could make inroads in their energy efficiency, and by incorporating those 3 recommendations, the business was able to go from spending £30,000 in their first year on energy spend to £18,500. And where you can see the 2 lines on the graph there, they're showing the spend over time, with the increase coming from 4% inflation. So it's really important to take into consideration things like inflation when thinking about your long-term savings. But you can see that even after sort of 10 years of time passing, the business was still spending less than they originally were in 2017. So there is a really big and attractive investment opportunity there to make into energy efficiency. So specifically looking at the hospitality sector, these are on the screen there are the top 3 recommendations that we would normally give to a typical company within the hospitality sector, and they're relatively basic, but they really do make a big impact, and so can be low cost with a really attractive payback. So the first one there is heating controls. The second is a general upgrade of lighting to more efficient lighting, and the third is an improvement of your energy management practices. So we'll go through each of these in turn and talk a little bit more about them. So the first thing is heating control. So one of the biggest things you can do as a business is, in terms of tackling energy efficiency, is to improve your overall heating system. So you can invest in a new boiler at a cost and see any energy efficiency gains there. But where you can make sort of low cost impact on your energy efficiency is where you can implement controls onto your existing system. So by implementing a system and making sure your system is adequately timed, is heating and cooling to adequate temperatures, you can make really big savings. So in terms of timing, make sure that you have a schedule of when certain rooms and certain areas of your business are in operation, and make sure that only during those times you're actually heating and cooling. You can also check the temperatures. So on the screen there are some typical guideline temperatures for different areas within a kind of standard hospitality sector business. So the temperatures on the right hand side there are a rough guide to follow, a rough rule of thumb when heating or cooling your space. So sticking to these will generally give you the right kind of temperature. By over sort of cooling or overheating by these temperatures, you can see an increase in your energy bills by about 8% per degree. So just by changing by a degree or 2 here or there, you can make some really big savings. And things that can help you here are sort of basic timers that you can implement on your heating system, making sure you have thermostats adequately placed, not near windows and doors, or other kind of heating or cooling systems. But you can also have a look at maybe weather compensation systems, which mean that you're heating system reacts to the climatic conditions externally and means that your system doesn't have to work as hard during perhaps warmer weather and knows to work at a certain level during cooler weather, for example. LED lighting is a really common recommendation we give to lots of businesses. So it's a relatively low cost initiative with a really interesting and exciting payback period often, but it can make a really big difference in your savings. So upgrading to LED lighting is sort of our top recommendation. It's the standard upgrade that's now in place across the world, really. So by implementing LED lighting in your business, you get all the benefits that you can see on the right hand side there. So much more efficient lighting, much more durable, they'll last a lot longer than your typical fluorescent or halogen bulbs. But a really interesting thing with LED lighting is that they react really well with additional controls. So they're really easy to control, and the same way with heating, by adding controls to an existing system, you can really start to see extra savings and bring down the payback time on any kind of investments you make. So types of control you can implement on your lighting system are passive infrared sensors. So these essentially are motion sensors that indicate when someone is or is not in a room, and so the lights will turn off and on accordingly due to proximity. Really good for infrequently used areas, sort of like hallways, lobby areas in hotels in particular, and can be really useful, so you don't have to rely on people turning lights on and off when they leave a room. Another type of sensor you can have are light sensitive sensors, and these react to light levels. So if a particular area is making good use of natural daylight through an open window or skylight, then the lighting system will know to dim or even turn off entirely if it needs to, dependent on those levels. So by essentially reducing the operating hours of your existing system, you can see savings of up to or around 30%. So a really attractive investment there. And then finally, this is the same kind of advice we give to any size company in any industry, really, is to have best practice energy management. And so by that we mean the following. So first off, define responsibilities. So establishing an energy team is a really useful first step. If you don't have the resources to do that, just making sure that everyone within the organisation understands their roles and responsibilities in terms of energy management. So reporting issues, making sure that they're not wasting energy, and understanding where they might be wasting energy. So good education in that regard. Another next step would be to record and understand your energy consumption if you don't already. And if you do, make sure that the way you record that and the way that you review your data is up to scratch and best practice. So making sure that you've got a good record of data that you know is reliable. So have you got data that's based on actual meter readings or estimated meter readings, for example? Have you got half-hourly data that you can take advantage of? Have you got a smart meter that you can take advantage of? All these things are really useful, and especially half-hourly data, where you can create yourself sort of daily profiles of your energy use, spot where things may be being wasted, and implement strategies accordingly. The next step would be to develop an energy management policy, so making sure that it's ingrained in your company and everyone's aware of it, that it's sort of strategized and signed off by senior management, and that everyone is aware of any targets that may have been set. And then finally, just good housekeeping and maintenance generally. So not only walking around in working hours and making sure everything's working as it should be, but going around out of hours, as out of hours energy use is often a large waste of energy in a small or medium-sized business. So that's energy management, and we might touch on a couple of these things in a few slides' time as well. So finally, this one is much more specific to hospitality in general. It's the catering side of things and kitchens in general. So You can see on the chart there the general breakdown of energy spend, energy use within a typical catering environment, most of which is spent on the actual cooking equipment itself, but also on space and water heating. So where you can firstly invest in the most efficient, up-to-date catering equipment, that's where you can make probably the biggest savings. But in terms of space heating and water heating, there's obviously a lot of heat. If you've ever worked in a kitchen environment, you'd understand there's a lot of heat going on in that environment, and that can often be recovered. So you can make savings elsewhere by recovering heat and making use of that heat elsewhere. So some heat can be used to preheat boiler feed and hot water feed, and so the system doesn't have to heat from such a low temperature. So you can make some big inroads there on your heating and hot water bills. Generally, the same principles apply in the kitchen. So making sure you have the most efficient lighting and heating system available. And then in terms of refrigeration, making sure that maintenance foremost is up to scratch, that you're not overstocking a refrigeration system, and that you're using the appropriate refrigerant gases as well. So obviously refrigerant gases with the lower or the lowest green global warming potential you can get in your system is the best advice there. You can see on the right there that the typical savings that we've given to SMEs in the kind of catering area of things have managed to gain those companies an average annual saving of about £1,000 a year. So there are some savings to be made in the kitchen and catering areas.
That's great, thanks Sam. We're now going to be having a look at transport. So this is quite an important area for tourism, whether it's in terms of your own transport as an organisation, for your employees and your operations, or whether you're thinking about the transport that your customers or visitors will be using. So I just wanted to run through three quite simple areas where you can make some really good efficiency and sustainability practices in place in terms of transport. So the first one in terms of bikes would be, can your visitors easily and safely leave their bikes when they're visiting you? And also, if you're a hotel or an attraction where people are going to be coming to visit, is it going to be possible for you to keep some bikes that visitors can be allowed to borrow during their stay? Hopefully this would mean that people are, one, it's a more attractive thing for people to do and explore the area by bike, and also be reducing the need for as many cars and parking spaces where you are. The next section would be public transport. So it's really helpful if you can offer as much advice as possible on how people can arrive to your business or to your attraction by public transport, rather than just thinking that they'll have to drive by car. And also, when they're there, how to travel around the area. So tourists who haven't been to the area before, they may otherwise assume that taxis are going to be the easiest way to get around, and often this isn't the case, especially in cities with strong public transport links. It's a good idea to just have as much information about that as possible available for visitors, so they know that it's a good option to go with. If you're not so well serviced by public transport, for example, if you're in a more rural area, it's worth thinking about shuttle buses for visitors arriving at airports or stations, whether you can put on a shuttle bus from those areas. And this not only helps people, meaning that they don't have to drive to get to you, but again is a good sustainability measure, reducing how many cars are going to be going around in the area. Similarly, if you're running a large event, for example, a big conference or a festival, it's a great idea to see if you can arrange a carpool scheme beforehand, and getting people to meet up in areas where they'll be traveling to you, which again reduces the need for as many cars. Another area in general just to think about and be aware of is the transport used in your supply chain. and also whether you're using any transport companies, for example buses, and whether these are using any electric vehicles or whether there's any potential to electrify those processes. So I'm just going to touch briefly on electric vehicles, and there's a couple of opportunities for you to think about. We have actually ran a webinar recently specifically on electric vehicles, so if it is something that you're interested in, that's available on YouTube, and I'd recommend listening back to that. We've also just published a guide on our website, which is free to download, and that's on electric and smart vehicles, and that's a good sort of deep dive into the current state of play and what you can potentially benefit from. Some things to think about. One to start with would be for your own vehicles or the vehicles of your staff. Can you have an electric vehicle as a company car or a pool car for your employees to use? Another thing to think about would be installing a charging point on your site if you haven't already. Again, this is very attractive to visitors if they may have their own electric vehicles anyway. Currently there are government incentives for charging points. I believe through the workplace charging scheme you can get grant funding of 25% of the cost of a single new charging station. So it's worth checking with the government's Office of Low Emission Vehicles to see what might be available for your business. There's also grants if you're thinking about investing in a new electric vehicle. I believe it's up to £3,500 available for new electric vehicles, and there is also grant funding for hybrid vehicles as well. And also there are tax exemptions and congestion charge exemptions for electric vehicles. This is particular of interest potentially to people in London because there is going to be definite savings to be made from the congestion charge and ultra low emission vehicle zone in London as well. But again, if you would like further information, the best place to start would be to download the guide from our website or to watch back our webinar on electric vehicles, which is on YouTube. So now we're just going to be having a look at some case studies. I'll just pass you over to Sam for an overview before we get started.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Annie. So we thought it would be best to spend a little bit of time showing you some specific examples of companies we've worked with within the sector who've been able to achieve savings for energy efficiency. So to give you a better idea of how they've done it and the typical savings they've been able to make. So as an overview of what we've been able to advise to the hospitality sector through the Green Business Fund, the opportunities we've identified for them have an average cost saving for each company of just over £16,000. So we have found opportunities to save money and energy and carbon there, and so the typical opportunities, as previously mentioned, that we tend to recommend intends to be improved energy management, upgrade to LED lighting, and heating, ventilation, and air conditioning improvements. So that isn't to say there aren't other improvements that can be made, and we'll get onto a couple more and sort of niche examples of within the industry where we've been able to help make changes, but these tend to be the typical areas. So you can see the average cost that we've managed to save for these companies and the typical payback that these will tend to fetch. So I think Annie has the first example.
Yeah, so for Classic Country Hotels in the Cotswolds, they had an energy assessment from us and they identified £4,700 per year of energy savings, and these were through three main recommendations. As Sam mentioned some of these. So the first one was managing energy as a controllable resource. So as Sam talked about earlier in the webinar, this includes things like making sure that you're measuring your energy and controlling it as best as you can, having a strong energy policy in place, and really being able to have a good handle on where your energy is going and where the opportunities are for savings. The other recommendations were upgrading their lighting to LED with controls, and also upgrading their cellar cooling system. This was an old system that they had in place, and they could replace it with a much more modern system, which with more controllable and with better control options. And all these energy savings of £4,700, that had a payback period of less than 4 years. So it was definitely worth them sort of going ahead with these savings.
Great. So another example, another hotel were able to achieve savings in a similar area, so just over £3,000 for this hotel in Manchester. And again, they were advised to upgrade their lighting to LED, so the most efficient, again with controls to bring down the payback and the operating hours of their system. Again, managing energy is a controllable resource, but again, this picks up so many different kind of variables, including good kind of operating procedures, maintenance procedures, things like that. And then finally installing a new HVAC control system. So making sure that they had the sensors and the controllability in place to make kind of changes on it with a digital kind of control system. And again, this payback was around 4 years. So you can see consistently that the payback and savings for certainly the hotel industry are there.
So for the Ropewalk, this is a arts centre that has 4 gallery spaces, and they also run as a venue for film, theatre, comedy and music. And so slightly different site, but again, these were the recommendations that were identified through an on-site energy assessment. Again, managing their energy as a controllable resource. One of the things highlighted here was making sure that they had startup and shutdown procedures for all of their energy use, lighting, computers, things like that, and also to try and encourage their staff and have a bit more staff engagement so that everybody in the organisation knew what the processes were and knew that they were all working together to reduce their energy costs. Again, replacing their lighting with LED. This was identified to reduce their lighting costs by over 23%. And finally, installing TRV. This is thermostatic radiator valves, which can reduce the water flow through a radiator when the temperature gets to a preset level. And also replacing their boiler. This reduced their heating use by around 14%. And again help to reduce their energy consumption.
Great. And then the kind of final case study we've got, the final example, is a little bit different. So this site probably needs a little bit more context explained for it. So this is a kind of multi-sport adventure park. And so one of its features is an indoor skydiving activity. There are lots of other activities going on site for varying different levels. So lots of visitor attraction here, and they also had their own small hotel. So lots of opportunities identified for energy savings. We kind of had to narrow it down to the top 3 for the case study, but they were given a kind of a number of different options to make savings. Overall, their energy spend was really quite high, so well over £400,000 a year, and that was not least due to their indoor skydiving system. So the system itself was inherited on the site from essentially the military. It was an old military site, and so this tower you can see in the imagery is used for their indoor skydiving, and essentially, due to its age and due to the fact it wasn't originally built to be used in this way, did waste a fair amount of energy, especially on cooling. So the energy needed to make a person fly indoors required a lot of energy. So there was a lot of excess heat generated from the system. So the original system was using a cooling system that used a lot of energy constantly to keep the whole system cool. And what we were able to identify to the company was that there was the opportunity to make use of a free cooling system, which essentially means investing in a system that will make use of the cooler external ambient temperatures, and using this external temperature to cool the internal temperature. It meant that the existing closed loop tunnel system, which was very energy intensive, didn't have to be used anymore, and they were able to substantially reduce their energy costs. We also recommended heat pumps for the whole site. So most of their heating was provided by electric heating system, and we were able to recommend heat pumps that were able to potentially give them savings of upwards up to 65% versus the existing system. So overall, the whole site was able to save 22%, which was equivalent to about £109,000 a year. So you can see that in the end, we probably were quite conservative with our estimate on the savings, but they could potentially have saved even more with those heat pumps over time. And then finally, the final recommendation was a solar PV installation. So they had lots of open space and flat roof space that they were able to utilise to invest in a substantially sized solar PV array to provide a considerable amount of their electricity needed for the site. So a bit of a niche area, but we wanted to show you this one as an example of where you might have quite a different site, catering to different types of people, offering different types of activity. You might have these kinds of energy uses in areas that aren't quite so widespread. So just to identify to you that there are areas where you can make savings even in kind of little known technology areas.
Great, thanks Sam. We're now going to have a quick look at some of the services available through the Green Business Fund, which you may be interested in, and we'll also be having a look at the next steps that we'd advise that you take. So the Green Business Fund is available throughout 2019. It's available for small and medium-sized businesses, schools, charities and organisations in England, Scotland and Wales. We've got the eligibility criteria there on the screen, so you have to meet at least 2 of the 3 criteria that are in green, and you also have to not be more than 25% owned by a larger entity. But basically any small or medium-sized businesses and schools and groups can potentially be eligible for the services.
Great. So the first of the services that we offer are our workshops, which we deliver around the country. So we deliver these workshops to SMEs within all kinds of different industries and sectors. So they're not specific to a technology or an industry. So what we do try and cover is energy efficiency in general, and cover lots of different technology areas and areas that you might be able to find opportunities in. So the workshop usually lasts a morning, so around 2 hours, and we go through as many different things as we possibly can and answer as many of your questions as we can. So the upcoming workshops that we've currently got are in Newcastle on the 12th of September and Aldershot on the 2nd of October. So if you're interested, or you know anyone who may be interested in attending a more generalised workshop for energy efficiency for SMEs, then do check out the website at the bottom there to see whether you can register.
So these are 2 of the main services that we're currently offering through the fund. So that's energy assessments. These are either remotely given or on site by our Carbon Trust experts. And as the case studies highlighted, these tend to make 3 recommendations for energy savings. These will be fully costed, so you know how to implement them, what the next steps are, and how to realise those energy savings. And they're all bespoke to your organisation and the types of energy that you're using. So it is a really good way of having a look at your energy spend. Again, they're completely free of charge to the business, and they carry no obligations. We also offer implementation advice, and this is a really good next step if you know that you're interested in, for example, going ahead with a solar project or an energy saving project like replacing your lighting or heating. If you know that this is what you're going to go ahead with, we can help you with the feasibility for these projects, identifying the best types of equipment, and we can also help you find reputable suppliers and gathering quotes for the project. And this is available for any non-large companies, so you can have up to 1,000 employees and still be eligible for the implementation advice side of things.
Great. And then we do have further technical webinars that we have already delivered and are upcoming. So for the webinars that we've already delivered, such as today's, these are all available online. So you can go via our website and that'll direct you to our YouTube page where all of our previous webinars will be available. So these cover, much like today, specific industry areas, but we also look at specific technology areas as well. So Annie gave the example earlier of the EV electric vehicle webinar, so you can learn all about electric vehicles and what that might mean for your business there. But there are many other examples that we've delivered and are soon to be delivered. So if you want to have a look at any further webinars that we might be delivering soon, then again, do check the website and register yourself for those. In a similar vein, we do have the publications. So again, these cover different technology areas and industries, and a few of the examples of those are available on that list there. You can view all of these previous publications on the website again. You just need to download them in PDF format and you can peruse them at your heart's content.
Great. We also have 3 tools which have been newly released and are available on our website. They're free to use and they are a good starting point for the first tool is measuring your carbon footprint. So if you have your energy spend data, you can use this in the tool and that'll give you a good overview of roughly your current carbon footprint area. So that's a good place to start. We also have a benchmarking tool which helps you prioritize energy reduction for different technologies, and it also lets you have a look at how you're currently performing against other businesses or organizations in your similar kinds of industry or region. And the third tool that we have currently is building the business case for lighting upgrades. So this is really helpful in terms of seeing how helpful replacing your lighting with LED may be for your business, and really helping to identify those energy savings so you can go ahead with the next steps. We also have another tool which will be released at some point before the end of the year, so do keep checking back on the website for that.
Great. And then finally, we just wanted to mention that we do have a separate scheme called the Green Business Directory. So separate to the Green Business Fund, this scheme is a way of suppliers of energy saving technology and the installers of this technology to become accredited by the Carbon Trust. So we accredit these suppliers for being able to deliver sort of thoughtful, well-designed, energy efficient and renewable energy systems. And so they have their accredited supplier status and they're on our website, on the directory, which anyone can utilize to find suppliers in their area for specific technology areas. So you can see on the left-hand side there a screenshot of our website where there's a map feature and a filter on the left-hand side where you can look to see where local suppliers are to you. You can also contact us and we will help shortlist suppliers on your behalf, give you an indication of the best suppliers to contact for specific technologies and in your area. So if you're interested in just having a look at the suppliers that are available, then do get in contact and we can assist you. And then finally, we just wanted to kind of summarize really and go through the next steps for you as businesses within the hospitality sector. So the first thing to do is understand your energy use. Once you've understood your energy usage, you're able to measure it and you're able to make changes within it. So making sure that you understand the data that you've got in front of you, again, whether it's actual data, meter reads, half hourly, what your tariff means, what kind of, if you're on a renewable energy tariff, all those kind of things. And once you've got that, you can start to look at your energy profile and where and when you're spending the energy, identifying opportunities. So identifying opportunities involves looking around the site yourself, compiling a checklist of the equipment that you may have, the different activities you've got going on, the operating hours of these things, and who's responsible for them all. But don't necessarily have to rely on just yourself to do this. If you want assistance in identifying opportunities, that's where organisations like the Carbon Trust can assist with impartial expert advice. Once those opportunities have been identified, it's then up to you to prioritise those actions by utilising the business case that will have been drawn up, indicating an action plan, who is responsible, when and why, and what they're going to be doing, and then make those changes and start measuring the savings that come from it. So don't just make the change and hope for the best. Make sure you're looking into the savings that are potentially being made, and so you know whether you should be making further changes in the future, or you're doing what you possibly can. And then keep making those changes and enforcing your policy that you've made within your organisation. So that's, I think, everything from us. We're now going to open the floor up to questions.
Yep, so if you have any questions, feel free to type these into the questions pane on the right hand side. We're just going to pause the webinar for a couple of minutes to give you a chance to write the questions, and then we'll have a few minutes to go through those. We'll get through as many as we can before the end, and that. If you do have questions, feel free to type them at any time, and we will go through them shortly. Hi again, everyone. Thanks for asking your questions. We'll just go through a couple now. So one question was, is there any more funding available? So at the moment, the Carbon Trust is offering interest-free loans for SMEs based in Wales. So if you are an organisation or you know of an organisation based in Wales that are looking to implement energy efficiency projects, they could potentially be eligible for an interest-free loan. Typically, the amount that they would have to pay back through the loan would be around the same or less than what they're saving through the energy savings. So it is a really good way of helping with that initial investment. In terms of other funding, there may be regional funds available. It's definitely worth reaching out to your local authority and local business growth hub to see if there is grant funding available near you. In terms of government funding, I briefly mentioned the incentives for electric vehicles and electrifying your fleet and charging points. So it's worth checking with the Office for Low Emission Vehicles in the government. There may be other government grant funding available in the future, so it's worth seeing how things go. We've got another question, which is, we're a small organisation with a limited budget. What would you suggest the first thing is to do to reduce our energy spend, which is quite high at the moment?
So, so the first thing to say is that there are plenty of zero and low cost ways that you can make savings within your business, and so it's just about identifying those. The kind of first stage of the process would be to look at your current energy management processes. sort of evaluating them, understand who is it that records your data, how do they do that, and what does it look like, and then look at your operating procedures, who's in charge of maintenance, what does that maintenance involve? Does it involve improvements, energy efficiency improvements, all these kind of things, and they're all zero or low cost ways you can improve the efficiency of the energy efficiency of your business, and also engaging in making sure that you have that kind of ingrained company policy that everyone's aware of, and everyone's aware of their responsibilities. There are going to be other kind of low cost measures, and making sure that they're right for you is really important. So that's where having an opportunity assessment from an impartial source is really, really helpful. They may be able to identify areas that you hadn't even considered. They may be able to spot things from an outside perspective that you hadn't thought about in terms of energy saving. But examples of low cost measures can be basic controls and timers. So if you've got lots of equipment that is spending and wasting energy out of hours, overnight, over weekends and holidays, etc., then you can implement kind of timers on individual pieces of equipment that can make dramatic savings just by reducing the operating hours of that equipment. Generally, controls, other retrofitting controls to existing equipment is going to be the low cost way to make improvements. The best way to make improvements, often, not always, is to invest in the newest equipment and making sure it's the most efficient. But again, having someone identify that opportunity is going to probably be the first step, making sure that you have the help and support there.
So just following on from that, you had another question, which is, what is the process, or how do we go about getting an energy assessment? So as I mentioned earlier, the criteria, just a reminder, if you are a small or medium-sized organisation, you would have to meet at least 2 of the 3 criteria of no more than 250 employees, and annual turnover not in excess of 25.9 million, and a balance sheet of below 12.9 million. If you do meet those criteria, you can apply for a free energy assessment. I would advise getting in touch sooner rather than later, because we are quite busy with energy assessments and they are available for a limited time. But you can go to our website, carbontrust.com/green business, and from there you can register your interest. There's a green button on the website, you fill in a bit of information about your business, and you can download a short application form, so just a couple of pages long, asks for some information about your current energy spend and your organisation to check if you're eligible. And once you send that back to the team, we would get in touch to discuss the next steps and arrange the energy assessment for you. And as Sam mentioned, it's a helpful way of being able to identify, particularly if you have a slightly niche organisation or you're not sure where to start in terms of reducing your energy spend. It is a helpful starting point to help you manage your organisation more sustainably and be more energy efficient, and also to reduce those costs as well, as we outlined. Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. I hope you found the information useful. We will be sending out the slides, and the recording will be available to view on YouTube in the coming days. So yeah, thank you everybody.